What's good? Osiris here. You're back in the middle with Middle MAGA. I like to take topics that I'm not an expert in and kind of put them in perspective for the common person. What does it mean for us? I saw this study here today, or I just saw it today, and it wasn't done today, but this study on vitamin D. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to be proclaiming anything. I want to look at it from the standpoint of what's the takeaway for the common person. So we have to be able to, as common people, look at what these so-called experts and doctors say and be able to discern what's right for me. I know people do this disclaimer and they say, well, you have to go to the doctor to find out what to do. That is not the right disclaimer. Nobody makes a medical decision about your body and yourself other than you. So I highly recommend going to a doctor to get information, and that doctor really works for you. I'll say, yes, doctor, let's go ahead and do it, or no, doctor, I don't want to. You make the decisions. The recommendation is to get the information from whoever you want to, including a doctor. This one is on the vitamin D. And one of the number one people that I saw talking about vitamin D, I'm not making any proclamations again here, is Brett Weinstein. And I want to show this, the basics of this study and then come to the conclusion as a common Joe in his basement. Surprise, surprise. This is from Dr. Simon Godek. Vitamin D deficiency was found in 82.2% of pandemic cases and 47.2% of population-based controls. So what they're saying is the people who had the pandemic, the C, they had a vitamin D deficiency that was much larger than the general population. And a lot of people aren't surprised by this, but it's just a study. It's not definitive. It's not a random control study, but I'm going to show the details. It is a control study. So it is better than some of these other ones we've seen. That wackadoo one that we saw that people who didn't take the jab were terrible drivers. That wasn't even a control study. This one is at least a control study, just to show a little bit of it. There's a lot that you see in these things. You can read these studies. To me, you just have to look at what you need to get out of it. So they just started out and said, hey, what's the role of vitamin D in these pandemics patients? And then my next thing is, what type of study is it? And in the methods, you'll see that in all of these. This one says retrospective case, meaning it's going back and looking at data. Control study. Control study means that there's just at least two groups. And you can see they're talking about the serum levels of vitamin D measured in both groups. So to me, this is a credible study. It's not the ultimate. It's not the best because it's not a random control trial, but they did have some level of control in there. Had 216 patients, 19 were on vitamin D supplements and were analyzed separately. And they came to conclusions here. I'm going to end with the summary and then give you my final take. In summary, the serum levels of this 25-OHD, that's just vitamin D levels, of hospitalized C pandemic patients are lower than sex-matched populations, male to male, female to female. It matters who you call a man or a woman. Biology matters. Based controls of similar age. Men with this viral disease represent the group with lower serum vitamin D levels than women. Serum vitamin D levels below 20 nanograms per milliliter were detected in 82% of the pandemic patients. So indicating they represent a population with a higher risk for vitamin D deficiency. So I'm not going to make any solid conclusions from this. And this study was well written. I've read some of these they look like clown world stuff. I've done videos on them. This one, look at the conclusion from this one. Very well written. They're not saying too much. Science is murky. Science doesn't come to definitive conclusions on many things. Scientists don't come to you and say, I did this study. This is what it means. This is definitive. No, it's a debate. And this said whether the treatment of vitamin D deficiency will play some role in the prevention of the viral disease or improve the prognosis of patients with pandemic remains to be elucidated. They're like, we're not claiming to say we have something definitive, but it is something to look at. And they even say you need large randomized control trials. Not all of them say this. That one that I read, that wackadoo study on if you didn't take the jab, you're prone to making mistakes and then driving almost like you're drunk. They didn't put anything in there about that you need large randomized control trials. It tells you a lot. And they said, which will certainly be necessary to precisely define the role of vitamin D supplementation in future waves of the pandemic. Here's my takeaway. When something goes down, I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime like it did with the pandemic. I have a feeling our life is going at light speed. Something's going to happen, whether it's a cyber attack or, God forbid, a nuclear event or another pandemic. We can speak. You don't need to be a doctor. You don't need to be some type of professional to speak and say, look, the drug that begins with the I that YouTube is, for some reason, very sensitive about, that drug, vitamin D. These are some of the losing weight, exercise. These are some of the first step measures for health of any type of thing. And for those things, for them to say, no, stay inside. You don't get sunlight. Vitamin D, you're going to have to supplement it with pills. The best way is sunlight, to my knowledge. You have to start with the simple solutions. And that is never big pharma. I'm not saying that the simple solutions are going to be the answer. I'm saying that those are where you have to start. If they don't tell you, start there before they say, open up your shoulder for me, something's wrong.
For the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death. For yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm.